Hi there, this is Progressive Alternative. I'm Victor Monharis, and this is part two basically of my All Heroes rankings list about how a bit of a recap about basically what it means to be an all hero. It's basically having an ability or a power or basically influence to make a difference, no matter what you are or what spectrum of entirety of life it is. Like you could be a police officer and basically save somebody from fire. You're going above and beyond the call of duty, and so basically I evaluate people based on that type of perception. So basically, this list, part two, Electrical Boogaloo, is basically how basically where I would rank them to all the circumstances of life. If you have anything more to add, you can leave a comment down below and basically like, share, subscribe, and as we basically keep on going throughout this entirety of our lives, we definitely need a lot more of that. Honorable mentions would be Katie Porter. She's a representative down there in Southern California for the House of Representatives. She's basically really works a lot more effectively with the Consumer Financial Bureau, or at least trying to have a lot more accountability for that in that committee, and trying to make sure that those with power to control our financial systems or our industrial complexes, such as our pharmaceutical and health, are held accountable and are often reminded that they serve the people basically. And she's doing this also because while being a single mother and basically having as much child care as she can get or afford to basically raise her family while also raising her profile to make a difference for her community, or to basically make a difference for the country. Now, do I think she'll actually really become something much more like a state senate or a United States senator or governor or that sort? No, she definitely has really found a home as a United States House of Representative, kind of like the similar stature as Barbara Lee, though Barbara Lee at this moment has kind of basically been quiet, though she has been basically seen as a reference point about how um, these wars that basically are always conducted without checks and balances have to properly be vetted as. And so she was basically a hero before. She's not on the list, but she is basically, that's basically where Katie Porter is going to find herself at. And, keep it up. Fantastic work. Always a good role model. Definitely looking at a great future at her. Roman Reigns is another honorable mention. World Wrestling Entertainment wrestler. I call them wrestlers, not superstars, even though Vince McNabb, the owner of the company, likes to make it all about entertainment. But yeah, dude, Roman Reigns basically suffered from leukemia, and that was basically apparently like his second time going through that, and just really being an inspirational story to tell people that if he can get through cancer, anybody can, and basically anybody can take on those resources. Though yes, he is provided under a corporation, but basically, or a company that really values him, and he is a superstar, and that he can at least have some influential power to the locker room, because apparently a lot of reports basically do say that, yeah, he is basically the leader there, and that Vince really needs him. So if Vince was trying to push that whole narrative, and people will say, oh yeah, he was just faking his cancer just to so he doesn't get booed a lot or they get ratings, it's like, that I have full and well confidence to know that Roman would not allow that to happen at all. If they found out that they ever tried to pull that off, that company would just go under with all the resources they get from charities that they basically promote for those cancer related issues. That would be totally against the whole stance of that company and the fall of that, and Roman would have not stood for it. He has enough power to at least make some essence of an influence there. Honorable mention, hopefully gets better storylines instead of just taking on part-timers that always gets the main championship. Good enough. So, continuing from the list, number 50, Bree Newsom. Bree Newsom, you may have remembered her. She took down a flag that was the Confederate flag in one of the state capitals, I believe in South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, or North Carolina. but no, South Carolina. Basically, taking down that flag that basically oppressed the people, African Americans, as slaves. That basically is the symbol of the enemy of the Union, basically of the country that they were at war against. That would be quite hysterical if somehow our enemy's army base was based on basically the enemy's preference or history. It's like, yeah, they want to protect American sovereignty, but yet oh yeah, we're still having the enemy's name on our military bases and flags, and we're still honoring them with statues of that sort. And it's like, oh yeah, of course, because of course they're white. It's that whole thing. And Bree Newsom makes the clear point on Twitter, still staying active, trying to elevate the African American voice. And it's basically a quite a leaning voice in the ongoing Democratic primary. Definitely just someone who's really dictating to know that sure, the race has come down to two old white dudes, and basically this Hawaiian girl from Hawaii who moved to New Hampshire. And it's like that basically is basically up to the people, and Bree Newsom really did something about that when she climbed up that flagpole, get that down, basically a protest, and really just saying, yeah, I get it, it's not losing your heritage, it's basically just saying we're not going to glorify it anymore. We're not going to erase you from history, because that's in history books. I hope you guys can read, and we will gladly teach you how to read too. And that's great about her. Number 49, Black Lightning. Black Lightning, who in the TV show from the CW, Black Lightning, who is a principal at a high school and basically raising his family. They all have superpowers too, as well, to an extent. And he has to try to figure out what's polluting his town, that basically also pollutes his school system with drugs or kidnappings, that try to figure out who also has superpowers. And he's able to carry on through this as much as he can, because I can't blame him for not being perfect. Not everybody can be as enough to just tell people you have to be perfect, or you have to basically overturn a town the whole night. He was involved in that whole cross universe, because apparently he wasn't always involved with basically every other CW superhero in that same universe. He was basically in a different universe, and then he finally got involved in it, and then basically made a good influence from what I was able to see, and what I was able to read from other people's comments. And basically I rely on basically the sources in order to properly elevate how much of an influence they could make, or how much power they able to use to help people out. And that's basically what Black Lightning was able to really elevate, as much as, of course, the African American community, to say we can be superheroes, just like Bree Newsom. And so that's quite it's essential to a fact. Number 48, Chad. He's also he was from Bleach, an anime show about this dude who basically saves his sister from some form of demons. And then, of course, after beating a demon up, he basically is given these powers to join a secret society that fights these demons as well. Kind of sounds like a similar show that is quite popular, that I see around the circuit, the social media circuit. And it's quite astounding, and Chad is able to really back up basically the main hero, Ichigo, to really go out there and just help him out, and still even have his own sense of adventures to really elevate others and take on these demons. He can also, without much power, he can also take down demons too. It's like, that's always impressive. I always just find that quite impressive in my All Heroes rankings. Is like, what happens when they lose their power? Can they still make a difference? Can they still influence others to really step it up as well? Number 47, Ant-Man, or Scott Lang. This is from the DC that would be a weird crossover. Marvel Cinematic Universe. He basically gets involved. He likes helping out his sister, or his daughter and still makes a difference for his family, even though he's divorced, even as he had a life of crime, basically stealing stuff. And then he's given the powers to basically shrink with basically a bodysuit that allows him to do those things and really help out the Avengers later on, and with his comedic, smarky, scientific quirks there, and just really becoming this whole attitude of trying to help out his people who have been enemies against him. And it's like, okay, I'm trying to help you out, and then like last second, it's like, no, they don't want it, but he at least did something about it as much as he can be. Yeah, it's just it's quite effective, and of course, Mr. Paul Rudd has been just quite tremendously clever with him. Pretty lovely. Number 46, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yes, the freshmen, they're still call them freshmen, but I call them, I guess you could say, newly congressional representative from New York, I believe the 14th congressional area. And yeah, she's just been able to make a bunch of clever points going against Republican top lawmakers that like to discriminate against different individuals, or just try to say, oh, and she didn't lead the efforts against that Amazon warehouse that they were trying to make in Manhattan, although that was mostly the local state lawmakers that were leading the efforts, but she was cheering them on and really letting them know that, okay, this is how you can better effectively be contributing to your local economy, and not let Amazon have a lot of tax breaks and free giveaways or incentives that doesn't benefit the community at all. And they were able to fight against them. And though a lot of people like to, those on the conservative side, always see AOC as the next Nancy Pelosi. Although with AOC, she's actually a lot more progressive and actually is open to discussion and actually talks with her constituents. Unlike Nancy, which I hope with AOC, I don't think she should be the next Speaker of the House, because that is, the whole label of the Democratic Party as, oh yeah, they're just coastal elites. And it's like, get somebody that's close to either the Southeast or in the Midwest to basically be the next House of Representatives or Speaker of the House, should the Democratic Party still maintain the House. And they have a good chance to do that. But of course, be kept honest, and AOC makes sure to do that, having that open conversation about the public, basically the Electoral College, and calling that out, and basically criticizing as much hateful content that she gets. Of course, a lot more of her colleagues later on this list get a lot more of that. Number 45, Goem Ishikawa the 13th? Yeah, the 13th, from Lupin the Third. He's the samurai swords dude who always hangs out with Lupin the Third, who's, they basically steal things, and he has this samurai sword. He's basically like Samurai Jack, except a lot, like 100 times more stronger and more agile to take out basically tanks and cars and basically people's guns and bullets away, almost like Kirito, which is another name we'll probably mention on this list very much later on. And it's just it's quite an incentive, quite saving. He has his own adventures where he saves individuals, ordinary individuals, from some crime mobs or from surveillance perverts, and a very malicious gang raping at pursuit, which great kudos to Gomon. And it's just like, my goodness, there was that one episode that kind of reminds you of a similar Sword Art Online type of experience or arc there. And it's like, Gomon is just quite intuitive, and he still tries to become this calm, reasonable dude that's leaning on principle, and it always gets on Lupin and Geomon's, or at least Yeah, the Zenyatta, I believe that would be the dude chasing him now. It's like he's quite something that's quite influential, or at least quite charismatic to the extent where he actually makes a difference in the whole gang, and it's not just seen as, oh yeah, it's like without Lupin you're nothing, basically. But he's much more than that. Number 44, Melania Unisafia. Yes, the woman that was basically shot in the head and basically lived to tell about it and won a Nobel Peace Prize all in Afghanistan to try to promote women's rights to have a better education and basically have it in the Middle East and Africa and make those type of advocate to help out women around the world to become much more better persons of themselves. And it's like, yeah, it's like she's pretty cool on Twitter too. It's like but mostly she kind of reserves most of her like witticism to her family, who's also on Twitter. And it's like that's that's pretty neat that she still at least has an ability to say, yeah, this is how I treat my family, and my father is the biggest influence of my life to basically help out in those issues. And it's like, but still being shot by the Taliban in the head and still surviving to tell it is quite excruciatingly profound, and still keeping up with the fight there. Though she goes to that country every chance she can get, but mostly now they live in the United Kingdom, and hopefully she's okay there now with the Brexit there, and hopefully the rise of right wing extremists hopefully doesn't excruciate her out of existence. So, and number 43, Tanjiho Kamidad. He's from Demon Slayer. He's the main dude. He has to save his sister to after basically his family getting massacred from a demon that basically killed them all. You knew that Bleach was going to come back to play, but Demon Slayer is like these different type of demons that is arising in a different form of era. In Bleach, it's kind of more in modern area. In Demon Slayer, it's more of like an era where basically not much technology is formed yet. Trains are just starting to basically be built, but mostly just basically anything that you need by hand is still needed, and commandos are still around there, but Tanjiro is still making an astounding difference about basically just doing it with a smile on his face and trying to keep up most of his comrades who are quite either they're very too scared or just too angry to really work together, and he basically calms them all down, and he never really gives up and tries to help out his sister, try to find the cure to get her from a demon into basically back into a human again. And it's quite a journey, and it's just quite excruciating, and really quite profound, as much of the villains that take on him are quite astounded by his resolve, and just really get calmed down whenever they do pass away, or they basically get their heads cut off because they're demons and they have to do that in order to beat them. Yeah, their moments are like, they're quite profound, and they're quite influenced that, my goodness, I'm in peace now. Number 43, yes, 43, no, 42. No, actually, yeah, 43. Yeah, you know what, it's Tanjiro's 43, and then, no, 43, I can never really get, I can list off better. 43, that would be 40, freaking dude, this. uh, I swear, I'm just gonna get lost in myself. 42. 42. I could readjust that later. 42. Naofumi Ikatawan from Rising of a Shield Hero. He's the dude that basically has is, basically summoned to another world, gets a library book, summoned to another world, and he's basically surrounded by three other dudes that basically also has weapons of their own. He basically gets attached to this one shield, and he can never get rid of it. And then, of course, shortly after, as he gets this new mission to take out this dark of dimension forces from destroying this homeland of some kingdom that's like apparently in a parallel universe that's still behind their times, is like, basically being helped by apparently the princess, and then he's framed for rape. and basically he never does anything with her. In fact, he basically goes into like another lodge, but the woman's like somewhere around, and then he gets accused of that. He's almost basically put to death, but of course, because he has the shield hero and he has to fulfill the prophecy, he basically gets branded as a demon, of the shield of the demon or something of that sort. It's like he's a bad dude. Don't associate anything to do with him. And so he has to basically start from the bottom instead of basically from what the other dudes are getting a lot more favoritism. He has to work his way up and basically get some raises basically what they call slaves, which is a girl who apparently is just like a half human and half raccoon, could be anywhere of that sort, with a tail and basically bunny ears. No, not bunny ears. It would be raccoon ears because they're cut smaller. But she's actually on this list a lot more higher, and I'll explain why later. But he's just losing himself a lot and does get fragile a lot. But he still is able to just come out of himself and just still help out the nation. And even at one point, he faced with the choice of actually facing that woman off again and really seeing her in a dire situation and basically turning that around. Sort of a little bit of a spoiler, but you kind of knew. It's called Rising of a Shield Hero. Probably not the type of hero that you're thinking of, but at least in that essence, he makes a difference there. 41, Diablo. Basically, his name is Diablo. We never actually find out what his name is. It's basically similar, like Naofumi. He gets summoned to another world, although he's kind of playing on a computer at first, like a VR MMO game. He gets summoned to another world. He's basically surrounded by these two very quite attractive ladies, and oh yeah, they have to say it's sort of similar as saving them from a dark dimension, but instead it's actually he has to destroy kingdoms. So basically he's already like displayed as his name would be Diablo, that he has to be the devil now, and he has to destroy these nations that have been violating human rights or haven't really been found quite sustainable for human existence. And so, but then of course he basically learns that a lot of these communities are either self underfunded or just basically corrupted, and he has to take out those who are corrupted, and then take out the other forces that want to harm them more than necessary than it is, and basically saves a lot more women, saves a lot more. He gets his own Harlem because of course that has to happen. But yeah, he is quite influential to the extent that, oh yeah, we have to take on these royalties. We have to take on these royalties that harm the people instead of helping them out. And it's like, it's quite, it's also quite funny too. The show, I never said the show. How Not to Summon a Demon Lord. That is literally titled there. Anyway, it feels like they're kind of getting lazy with this, especially with other shows that have longer titles than that. Why? What's with the long explanatory sentences as titles? Number 40, Ernest Evangeliera. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't do that name. But he's from Knights and Magic. Also a dude who basically, he's not summoned to another world. He's actually reincarnated. So basically like Ramu, who basically comedically gets stabbed. Instead, Ernest, he gets run over by a car. Of course, his name wasn't Ernest back when he was basically just a regular Japanese dude who really loved building Gundam mobiles and building robots, basically, that can be fighter jets or can be used for technology. And then he gets reincarnated as a young lad by the name of Ernest, and basically really wants to keep building robots, and that's his main drive throughout the whole entire show. He wants to keep building Gundams, basically Gundams, though they're called something different in the world that he's summoned into, as you can guess, medieval times basically in that sort. But magic exists, so with magic you can actually make these type of modifications of robots, or at least in the sense of these machines that can really fight as Gundams. And he basically is quite influential throughout the whole kingdom of encouraging engineers and encouraging royalty to invest in him and to keep helping out those who want to learn more about magic and how they can improve their communities. And it's quite an intriguing show. It's pretty pretty not tailing a simple show, and trying to save princesses, trying to save kingdoms from basically falling against the dark forces that want to steal away his data. And he doesn't like it when people try to use his creations against them. It's quite interesting. Number 39, LeBron James. Now, he used to actually be in the top 5 because, hey, you've got Cleveland, the city of Cleveland, a title, which is basically near to impossible to do. Thanks, Browns. Thanks, everyone there. To uplift that whole city and make a difference to bring up democracy and bring up a lot of things that I'm more than just a basketball player. I have opinions too. We all have opinions. Unfortunately, his comments about the whole Chinese basically governmental shutdown and how they're dealing with Hong Kong protesters and they need their own sense of democracy there has quite been undersold and been quite detrimental to him, and so he's been basically not there. It's like basically telling one of the people, like general manager of Houston Rockets, that he doesn't really know the full context of the situation. It's like not really the best thing to do. And as I look through, read history and read and listen to other experiences, they say that, this Chinese government is trying to be an authoritarian regime. And as you can see that now with the whole virus crisis there, that government in China has not been well responsive against that. And they should have listened to the doctor that originally discovered that virus and that don't mess around with it, don't misuse it. And they didn't listen to him, and it's like now we're in this whole crisis now that's canceling most of our sports. Thanks, LeBron. Could have really helped, and could need your help there. So he gets down there all the way to 39. Number 38, Yujiro Atamani. He's from the show Gate. Apparently, all these parallel universe basically comes into formation. There's a gate. Monsters are attacking the human world, basically our reality in that extent. And so this one soldier basically helps out with the circumstances there, leads the efforts, go into the other world, sees that they're going through their own similar democracy in fragile there, and really gets along with a bunch of the ladies there, because there has to be a Harlem. It's A1 Pictures. They gotta have at least one something like that there, and really is influential in both basically the human world and basically that other parallel magical world there. And pretty charismatic guy, and he's basically quite a fan of basically the genre that he is currently in. So a lot of fourth wall breaking there. No, actually, no. There's a good quality amount of fourth wall breaking there. And of course, number 37. It would be this little girl right here, Ryoko Mateo. Yes, she's from Kill la Kill. Basically, a woman or a girl basically discovers that her father has been murdered, and she has to try to figure out who killed her father, and she has to go to the school. And then, of course, she finds out the school is very much more tougher than it thought until she finds this particular uniform. Sorry about that little panty shot, because they did that a lot in the show. They should be a note to that. A lot of nudity in that show as well. Not the nudity that, we're basically used to, but basically tries to uplift others. Be so angry at basically a lot of things that people do, or try to convince themselves that they are stuck with themselves with, and just really just quite just a strong girl that basically uplifts her friends and always fights for them and tries to figure out what she is, and as she struggles through that, what she basically currently is. What she later learns to become is like, how does she handle it? She doesn't handle it pretty well, and then, basically turns her around thanks to her friends because she influenced them enough to do that. And that's quite basically the show there with Kill la Kill. Number 36, Simone from Gurren Lagann. Yes, I know, it's been a long time since that show came out, but still quite influential enough because this dude whose family was crushed by these creatures that took over the earth, and they have to be stuck underground, and he leads or at least is helped by his friend Kamika, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry if I've mistaken his name, but he basically, after leading the efforts to basically go above the ground finally and lead the people there and take on these forces. And basically, after overtaking those forces, basically, what do you do after that now that you have your paradise back? And you have to maintain your own sense of paradise while also having to face an enemy that might come back to hurt you in the end. And so, just being the charismatic individual and basically trying to be elevating, he has to grow. He struggles here and there, but just leading enough of the efforts to be an underdog story where he takes down the huge amount of leader and basically just. It's quite a riveting story with Gurren Lagann, and just still many years after that show originally broadcast, about I want to say 18 years, more than that, I think so, and just still playing a huge part in our community, the anime community here, and even outside of that too. Supergirl, number 35. It's much more of a romantic comedy with that show, and with what I've seen and what I've read. It's just, Kara, or her other name is basically Kara. And yeah, she has basically the superpowers of Superman, but always having to balance her life with her romance and basically saving the world, and having to take, oh yeah, I'm being overshadowed by Superman, but that's okay because at least I get to spend much more time with my friends and family, getting to unite a lot of other foreign creatures or aliens around the world and around the universe as well. And that's basically what she has to struggle with and has to take on. And that's quite admirable about her, and how she's able to really conduct herself. Sometimes she gets angry, but that's okay. You have to find out how you can actually better improve relations between your humankind, and the people and the universe around you. Can't be easy, but she is able to find ways, even sometimes without her powers too. I believe there was a couple of episodes about that. Quite hilarious, apparently. Number 34, Ikaya Kurogain. He's from Calvary of a Failed Knight. Apparently this dude who basically gets into another school and basically is trying to basically find himself there as apparently someone who's never really passed anything before in his life, starts to get infused because he meets with this one woman by the name of Stella. And yeah, just really working up the ranks to becoming a better knight in the school that apparently is like night school. There's a show about that. I know there is. And there's probably like different variations of that. So apparently like the whole school structure is kind of like all barbaric against them, rising enough to just say, oh yeah, are you cheating? Are you just in a romantic relationship with this princess? It's like, we're going to keep you in captive. For some reason, they kept him in captive for about more than 2 weeks, and he still has to fight in these tournaments where he has to grueling competition, and he's basically barely fed or given water, and he still has to go out there and perform excruciating part lane. There's only one season of this, and everyone's always asking, where's that second season? Where is it? Yeah, I might be one of those. Maybe. If I can get a better story instead of just basically what's shown. Number 33, Po from Kung Fu Panda. Basically, the only panda basically becomes a karate master, even though he wasn't originally trained as one. And with the power of food in his thoughts, he becomes a karate master. Basically, saves China about maybe 2 times from basically barbaric competitors that just get so easily jealous. And it's just the third movie was not very good, or it was good, it wasn't fantastically great. It's like the villain seemed kind of very downplayed. The first 2 were pretty marvelous, and it just really captured the eye of the imagination. And it's like, fortunately, because he's an endangered, right now in this universe, endangered species of pandas, it's quite influential, but unfortunately, like, you didn't have it end on a very good high note. Number 32, Ichigo Karasaki, Bleach. Yeah, the brother that saved his sisters and basically leads the efforts to take on this organization that at first, he goes against them, and because he's they're about to kill the person that gave him the powers to begin with, and basically leading the personage of basically people who are lower than them, and basically standing up against them and working together, even though he has this very magnetic view against them. It's like quite compelling, and it's just people still want that show back. Hopefully it gets done. Probably not in basically in the next year future. Hopefully it does, because it is quite an astounding show. Captain America 31, Steve Rogers. Basically, when he didn't have powers, he was quite never really giving up, know what his principles were. And then when he's given the powers, because he's such a basically not to say he's a nice dude, but he is quite an astounding kind person to basically think instead of just using your brawn muscles. And it's like, yeah, just leading the efforts to just not only just being blind because, oh yeah, his generation from the 1940s was quite innocent, and then, oh yeah, they did have rough patches, and there are people in that age when he basically joins the Avengers in the modern time to basically keep on fighting and keep on having your own principle, even though the principles or the world that you used to be in is not there anymore. You still have a future to fight for. And then basically at the end, he, spoiler alert, he basically gets to live his life out as an old person, and still is able to influence like two of his friends to just say, you take the shield now, and you have to stand for that principle of protecting others and make sure that you don't lose yourself to basically evil or regrets. That's a good, and of course, Chris Evans played a marvelous Captain America. Hopefully there are, much more to influence afterward. Black Panther 30, T'Challa. It's like he basically continues to protect his nation in the African nation of Wakanda. Woo! Sorry, I had to do that part. But yeah, quite influential. A great, fantastic movie really made about what happens, because yes, it is, an African American nation, or at least an African nation that, has power. What did they do with it? What did they accomplish with it? Maybe even what happens to him when he doesn't have those powers, or doesn't have the advantage of basically protecting his country, or basically having to take on something that's not really his problem, even though it's from his ancestors, but he has to better resolve it, and has to better resolve it, and make sure that it is a better peace for him and his people. And just still really amazing music in that movie, and what he does later in the Avengers as well. Number 29, Seth. I gotta go a little bit more faster. Radiant. A horn. There's like two horns on the boy's head in a magical world where apparently his kind are very much more discriminated, and as every adventure he keeps going on to, there's more discrimination he has to take on, and especially that one immigration arc that I was really a fan of. And it's like, oh yeah, every conservative standing point is like, there's a disease and they're coming to rape our kids, they're bringing in drugs, and and he fights against that, and he has friends who help him along that journey, and his main point is to take on Radiant, apparently a magical being that basically polluted basically the world at that point. And it's quite encouraging. Hopefully there's another season. They had 2 seasons, and hopefully there's more. Really magical, really fantastically funny. If it's ever on Toonami, then people will definitely complain that it feels like One Piece. Kind of feels like One Piece, even though there's only 41 episodes. Anyway, 27, Wonder Woman. Basically, or no, 28 Wonder Woman. Yep, the whole DC version, Gail Gadot helping out her nation, that she basically an island of women of Amazonians, and it's like then she wants to help out the human world after they're encountered by the human world basically. And oh yeah, it's a World War One, or at least World War One, and like yeah, she helps them out, and she's quite influential with that. People were just so influenced by that movie, especially women, that they can also make a difference there. Can't really tell much more amazing stuff, except that it basically was a female version of a Zack Snyder film. That's cool. And people are so looking forward to Wonder Woman 1984. So hopefully she rises up in those rankings to be quite not naive, but still acknowledgeable and tries to blend in with the reality of the situation. Number 40. Nope, nope. Don't want to loosen that thought again. 27. Ratalia. Ratalia. Yes, Ratalia. From Rising of a Shield Hero. Yes, the slave girl that basically Naofumi basically teaches her with, raises her. She becomes a much more better hero than Naofumi. I hope that's an unpopular opinion because that would be quite charismatic. You know, she propels the story more. She's more positive. She helps out the people when she becomes stronger that were basically enslaved. And just, my goodness, just really the best girl that basically can be around there to basically uplift the main hero whenever now for me whenever he starts to lose it, that he starts to think that there is nothing more that he can do and that he should just give up on the entirety of life and just become evil because that's what he is, that's what he was branded as. But she always encourages him up, and I really love that in women that can encourage others. And so, last one to be last off to end it. Sorry, this was a long one. 26. Julius Alexandria von Russefield. She's from Astric War. Basically, a show, basically with similar powers. It's like they're knights, but it's like, oh yeah, there's this whole magical power that basically propels their weapons, and every other person that basically has an ability, kind of like My Hero Academia, but not without the costumes and stuff. Oh yeah, it's just uniforms, and it's like they have these specialty swords, and she's apparently a princess of a nation she has to take care of, and people are still influenced by her because she's this quite a beautiful woman that basically backs up the main hero that I will have to discuss in part 3. And she knows her faults, and she even though she has royalty money with her, she still wants to earn her place to actually help out her people. And just really quite, and she's kind of like a Tanzere personality that she may seem mean, but it's because she she likes to be a little bit distant with people. Not the greatest people person ever, but enough to just say, hey, I have an amazing amount of friends here that I could definitely learn, and I have a determination to keep orphanages open. And as much later on, basically, she becomes a lot more of a much more symbolical hero for that country, and of course, romantic partner for the main character. So, with that being said, part 3 will basically be up much more later this week or next week. It'll definitely depend on my time. But agree or disagree, like, share, subscribe. This has been Progressive Alternative with Victor Monjares. I'm Victor Monjares, and I'll see you later. Take care, guys. Always nailed it. Always nailed it on the good try.